Howdy. I want to have another little discussion with you about the County Extension Agent Annual Achievement Report. This is a report that accompanies your plan summaries and is used as a basis for your performance appraisal system document, your appraisal instrument. And there's a lot of confusion and misunderstandings, I think, about it. And when I start seeing that some of the newer agents have a really good grasp of it while others don't, and sometimes I get to believe that maybe that's just an issue of communication and perhaps also just a commitment to learning and applying yourself to some of these principles. It's a little hard to understand, but it's not rocket science. And so what I'd like to do today is just talk to you a little bit about this and maybe generate some opportunities for discussion and questions if there are any. I'm going to share a screen with you here real quick as we get started. And what you'll find here in front of you is the County Extension Agent Annual Achievement Report. This is a template that you can use to add content, and it is built exclusively off of the criteria for the county performance appraisal system. So I'm gonna flip over here to the performance appraisal system real quick, and just to make an illustration here, all of these criteria right here, okay, are all of the same criteria that you will find in the content tips. So word for word, here you go. So what you're basically doing in this achievement report is you are documenting what you did in the prior year during the period in review, which is generally January 1 to December 31 of that year, unless you're a newer agent and you started in February or March or some other year, but you will have to have at least worked for 9 months in order to be eligible for a full appraisal. Otherwise, it'll be an appraisal without a score. So much like you see over here, provide leadership for determining specific issues in the county or designated area responsibility. Right here you find provided leadership for determining specific issues in the county or a designated area responsibility. That is the criteria. So to what extent did you provide leadership for determining specific issues in the county or designated area responsibility? How did you do that? That's what you put in here, if I can get this. That's what you put in here. Okay? Now, let me tell you what you don't do. What you don't do is put agent provided leadership for determining issues in the area of responsibility. Okay? You don't repeat the criteria. What you do is you put those achievements or those actions that you did that year in order to do that, to accomplish that expectation or to meet that criteria. And and that could be in many different forms. That could be through the Texas Community Futures Forum process, either as in the nominal group technique that we do traditionally, every so many years, or it could be through the issue identification process through the Leadership Advisory Board or some other venue. But however you do it, you put it in here. What makes this a little bit challenging is that this document is limited to 4 pages. And so the tendency is to write and write and write and write a lot, hoping that by being more thorough, that somehow or another you're gonna include what is required and what's necessary. It's almost like throwing out a big net, And the bigger the net you throw out, the greater the chances you're going to catch what you want to capture in that section. So when you're only given 2 inches to do this, you've got to be very, very picky about what you include. And if you're not being selective and you're not being strategic with what you include, you're going to run out of space in a hurry. And you're going to tend to do it at the expense of areas that are very, very important. Okay, so in this area of in-depth program planning, the kinds of things that you want to include are how you provided leadership, how you did it, how you organized, what are your planning groups, when did they meet, how many met, what did they do, what resource people did you include, were there any external or multi-county planning groups, did you do any modifications based on client needs, if so, what, did you you know, how are those issues tied to your programs? Is there data to support the relevance of issues and needs? That all of these kinds of things are the kinds of things that should be captured here. Now, for purposes of your performance appraisal, okay, we can also use your plan summaries as a basis for that, and along with your achievement report. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your achievement report complements your plan summary. You don't want it to mirror it. You don't want a duplicate of your plan summary in your achievement report. Your plan summary should be written for an audience in the third person. Your achievement report should be written in the first person. It is perfectly okay. Matter of fact, it is encouraged for you to, for your writing style on your achievement report, to use the letter I. I did this, I did that, I had it. Nobody's going to read this except me and you and whoever reviews your dossier at some point in the future. This is not for the general public. This is a confidential document that's only used internally as part of the review process, and it's not even your, you know, it doesn't have any scores on it or anything like that. So it's you know, it's not anything that is going to be put on a website somewhere. So feel free to write it in such a way where you are making the case for what you achieved this last year. It should be written in the first person using the word I. It should be written in the past tense. Okay, and it should give specific examples of what you did in the previous year. It's an achievement report. What did you achieve? What did you accomplish? It should not be a descriptive document. It shouldn't describe what you do or what a county extension agent does. Okay, I meet with my committees every year. That's not what I want to know. I know that, okay? I know that you meet with them every year. What I want to know is what you did this past year. How many times did you meet with them? What did you meet about? How many attended? How many are on your committee? What did you discuss? What role did the committee members play? And the trick is to get all of that type of content put in that one area. And you can use the bullets here as a guide for that. But what I'll find a lot of times in these achievement reports is I'll take last year's report and I'll take this year's report and I'll put them side by side, and guess what? They're identical. And when they're identical, then you know you're doing it wrong, because you don't do the same thing every year. You don't meet the same time. You don't have the same number of attendees. They don't discuss the same thing, or shouldn't. Your achievement should be different from one year to the next. Okay, and they should even build on the prior year. Now, your achievement report can be less than 4 pages, but it cannot be more than 4 pages. And so, one other thing I want to look kind of get your attention on is, this is the basic content to receive a rating of 3. So if you do everything that you're supposed to do, okay, you get a performance appraisal rating of 3. If you want a 4 or a 5, this criteria down here has to be evident, has to be obvious, has to be noted. And that's committees that are representative of the community, that they're diverse, that you meet well beyond the minimum number of times, that you have multiple active planning groups that are large and engaged and are truly engaged in the overall program, not just attending the meetings. Okay, so that gives you a little bit about that. Now I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to come and I'm going to show you what a first-year agent did in this area, just to kind of give you a sense. And I've blacked out some of the areas in here so that you can't tell who it is, but you probably figure it out anyway. But here, coalition consists of 12 members, 1 county official, 2 wellness coordinators, 2 private insurance retailers, 4 representatives. That tells me a lot of information, okay? And it tells you when they met, what they did. Lots of good information here about all of those sorts of areas. And that is really, really important. And you say that it's all in the past tense, have been, provided, just goes into lots of detail about the program planning aspect, the parts of the job that have to do with engaging planning groups and volunteers, what the issues are, and so on and so forth. There's a lot out there to capture, but that's a really, really good example of how that got done. So that's the first area, okay? Now, if we go to the second area over here, you'll see this is in-depth program implementation. In-depth program implementation, and if you notice, these totally exactly mirror the performance appraisal system. So that was done deliberately, intentionally, so that agents could make the connection between the instrument that is used to measure their performance with the achievement report, how they document what they did that year, and then that also then flows right into the career ladder system, which we're not going to talk about today, but that's why this has to be done so well. And this document here is used to inform the decision on how an agent performs in a given year. The accumulation of these achievement reports over time are what we use to determine if and when an agent should be promoted to the next level. Okay, so it's a classic rabbit and the hare, the turtle and the hare is some agents may do all that is required for promotion in 3 or 4 years, or 5, just depends on the situation, and they may get promoted. Other agents may take a few more years, 1 or 2 more years of accumulated achievements before they reach that level of criteria that has been met that is necessary to move them to the next career ladder level. So, a lot of times people get confused between your performance rating and your career ladder and your eligibility for career ladder and so forth. So, and they'll get confounded with the performance appraisal system and the achievement report and other kinds of things like that. But understand that the relationship between all of these documents is deliberate, intentional, and very, very strategic, so that one supports the other and builds on the other. And so once you kind of get used to it, you'll find that it's very, very helpful and supports the kinds of things that you want to do. Okay, so let's move then from program planning to program implementation. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but here we go. It's the same criteria as you'll find in the performance appraisal. Who's your audience? Is it the appropriate audience? How's your participation? Methods and outreach, result demonstrations, participant feedback, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And then for a 4 to 5 rating, significant teaching by the agent is evident. Teaching methods include an appropriate mix of traditional, electronic, etc. Okay, so those are the additional things that you would meet in there. Now, if you come back to this this agent example over here, you know, they talk again. They talk about they summarize these programs in such a way where they tell you, you know, here we got implemented Walk Across Texas, 441 youth, 301 adults, 8-week program, collaborated with all of these people. Adult participants were faculty and staff, county employees, seniors, marketed through internet, flyers, social media, and word of mouth. Activities were available. You know, it tells you everything that you need to know to understand in a nutshell what was done. And for more detail, you can go into the plan summary to learn a little bit more. But this is the heart and soul of how you're going. And you've got to keep this brief, which makes word selection and what you include in here all the more important. Because it's a whole lot easier to create a 20-page document than it is to create a 4-page document. And that's probably the biggest complicating factor here is the tendency to want to get a little, you know, to include a lot of information and then having to go back and cut stuff out, and that becomes very, very difficult. So it's a lot easier to build it from the ground up, being very strategic about what you put in. Partnering with Community Action, Dinner Tonight, Healthy Cooking School, during their Nation Health Center Week, 160 participants used interactive video. I understand everything that's going on with this, how many people are participating, what they did, who the audience was, who the partners were and the collaborators were, and look how and this is 5 major programming emphasis. Okay, in a paragraph, it can be done. For evaluation, okay, again, you don't want to go in there and copy and paste from your plan summary. You want to talk instead about some of the methodology, maybe, because you don't want, and those are things that sometimes are not appropriate to be placed in the plan summary. So, you know, here we talk about walk across, and this isn't a perfect one. None of them are perfect. You just want one that's done well. Walk Across Texas was evaluated for quality and effectiveness by increased participation from 2017 to 2018. This is what they're measuring, you know. They're measuring level of participation from one year to the next and how much that grew, the potential economic impact, the percentage of participants who could avoid or delay developing diabetes. It's just excellent. And then adult participation 308, which is an increase over the prior year. So it tells me, hey, this program is growing. Okay, and when people don't put that stuff in there, you know, I don't know whether they're trying to deliberately make information vague and to where you can't find it as a deliberate thing, or whether it's just something that just a blind spot they develop, but the result is the same, whether you meant to run the stop sign or whether you just didn't see it. Okay, you still ran it, and you put yourself in a situation where you are at risk when you didn't have to be if you'd have paid attention, and given, and most of the time the pay attention means assuring that you dedicate the necessary amount of time to do this well. And you've spent an entire year doing all this stuff, so sit down and take the necessary time that it takes to do this document well. We are extension educators in the A&M system. We're educated professional people, and if we can't write something up well, then what a shame that is. Learn, Grow, Eat, Go. it even talks a little bit about it picks 3 little data points, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more, but hunts and picks those. Look over here. $3.6 million net present value for healthcare cost benefits for participation. So there's an economic benefit right there as well. Just really good summary. And you look at this and you say, this person is got a program that is growing from last year to this year. There's there's indicators here where there was measured. There's good participation levels in the hundreds and hundreds for each program. So you know how many are participating, and you know what they're learning and how and to what extent. I mean, it's just very well done. And then here's the outreach section. Provided outreach to 100 participants. These are all the different outreach sections that cover a number of the other types of things: program development, participation levels, evaluation, and accountability there. And again, it's a short section, but you want to be able to capture each of those criteria in some form or fashion, so that people have at least a flavor or a sense of what you accomplished that year in outreach education for your plans that have an outreach in it. Okay, accountability and interpretation. I'm gonna go back. Annual program plans completed, submitted on time. Well, that's a good thing to put in there. I've seen a lot of agents that put that in there, and nothing could be further from the truth. So if you're going to put in there that that all of your monthly reports were all completed and submitted on time, then they better have been completed and submitted on time. Because if they're not, that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to say you did something that you didn't do, because it puts everything else that you write in here. It causes people to be suspicious. If they know you were late 30% of the time and you say you were completed and on time 100%, say, okay, well, that's not true, but what else in here may not be true? All right, so best just to be honest about this. In-depth program summaries and HST State of Health report. This talks about all the reports, Commissioner's Court. If you are some of the things that get put in here, you put what you did in here, but a lot of times what we end up looking for is missing. So one of the things I'm looking for in here was there any interpretation done with state representatives, state officials, with the Leadership Advisory Board? I see Commissioner's Court. I see they're working with the county coordinator. They had a county interpretation event, so on and so forth. But what's missing? Okay, and now let's go back and look over here and let's try to see what may be missing. Okay, well, here it says using internet, radio, TV, so on and so forth. Those are the things you can go back and look. State official, federal, state official. Well, there wasn't any federal or state officials there. So does that mean they didn't do that, or does that mean that they didn't report it? Okay, and this agent here was in their first year. So are you going to hold them? Am I going to hold them as accountable for that as I would maybe an agent that's been around 10 years? Probably not. But if I've got an agent that's been around for 10, 15 years and they're not communicating with their state officials and federal officials as appropriate, well, we're going to have to ask some questions about that. And why is that not in there? And inevitably, I'll get some kind of a response. Well, I mailed them something, or whatever the case might be. But it needs to be in here. And those are the kind of the holes, the little things that affect your score and also can affect your promotion. Volunteer engagement, same thing here. You've got a youth ambassador, you've got master wellness volunteers. Again, to the extent that you can, include numbers. Include numbers. How many volunteers do you have? you can take the number that you have in your Texas data report and transpose it in here. Even back here in these program implementation part right here, I see a lot of agents that go in there and they'll take their Texas data reports and they'll talk about how many plans that they had that were in depth versus how many plans that they had that were outreach, and how many contacts they had, how many contact hours, and they'll summarize that in here. So use your Texas data reports as a source for numbers. I want numbers in here. I don't know if other DEAs want numbers or not, but I want some of these achievements quantified. How many volunteers did you have? You know, gratitude and recognition are expressed to volunteers at multiple times throughout the year. Good. When? How many times? Multiple times. That's 2 or more. Was it 2 times? Was it 3 times? How was that conducted? Be specific. And how many volunteers do you have? And when folks are not specific, what that causes me to wonder about is how it is what the true nature of that number may actually be. Okay? Because when I don't want somebody to know something, I don't tell them. That's the tendency. So that's what I automatically begin to assume when I fail to see numbers and specifics. So that's something to remember. Again, in volunteer, and you can get all these volunteer numbers out of the report that is filed every year on Texas data, and or from those numbers that you actually put in your report, which you should be doing every month. Okay, so numbers. What kind of volunteers are they? You know, you can organize them according to the volunteers that you have. And again, let's go back to this. Volunteers teaching, volunteers on your committees, result demonstration cooperators, master volunteers, your screening of volunteers, that should be in there, especially if you have 4-H responsibilities. How did you recruit, involve, manage, and recognize them? If you recognize them multiple times, tell me about it. If you only recognize them once, tell me about it. If you recognize them with certificates or with a picture in the newspaper, you know, tell me about that. How many times? What? Be specific. Be specific. And that's how, because those specifics will point towards your achievements that year. For a rating of 4 or 5, there needs to be evidence of volunteer leadership in the programs, volunteers taking ownership of programs, recognition of volunteers that is planned and intentional. Okay? All right. Moving on to other human resources. Same criteria for a 4 or 5. You need to be successful in securing additional human resources, partnering with other organizations, departments to maximize human capital. Okay, and over here, this agent, where are we at here? Oh, you know, interviews, participated in interviews, utilized other agents, partner organizations, stakeholders for program support. Okay, well, that's not part of human resources. See, so that's an error in that part. This is just paid staff, just paid staff. Material resources, again, money, specifics, and I want dollar amounts. Now let's go see what this one says. But oh, here's $5,000 for the HST budget. Here's $500 for BLT budget. Here, but see, there's all kinds of little references here to the things that are done. You don't necessarily have to put every single donation in here. But what I ask agents to do sometimes is to take, just tell me how much in grants, how much in donors and sponsors, and how much in kind. Those are the big 3 right there. And then if you happen to have any budgetary allocations, county budget, any special program budgets such as BLT or GNHC or Healthy South Texas, or anything else like that, any other grants that you receive, put that all in there and just say, I had 2 grants totaling $10,000. I had 15 sponsors that provided a total of $8,500. If you have 4-H clubs out there that are fundraising, that needs to be in there. I had 10 4-H club. And how do you find out how much they fundraise? Well, get in there on their charters and find out get a handle on their budget and find out there, calculate it all up, or else find out how much cash on hand they have and just say, every one of them is going to have a bank statement in there. How much money do they have in the bank? That may not be how much money they raised, but that's how much money they have. That's the level of resources that are out there to support that club or that support group, whatever it may be, Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, what have you. But something in there that gives an indication of material resources, and I'll get a lot of these achievement reports that will say, I effectively manage funds for this and for that and for the other. Well, good. That's wonderful testimonial to hear, but I want to know what those funds are and in what amount they're in and how they were used to make your program bigger and better, because that's the whole idea. It's not to raise all that money to hoard or to rat hole for the future. I mean, you need to, how was that used to enhance what you did? Okay. Now that's an important one to put in there as well. Internal relationships, and we're kind of getting towards the last 2 sections here in the achievement report. Internal, you have all your basic content, and then very evident, positive, and inviting office atmosphere. And I'll tell you, if you don't know what it feels like in your office, somebody walks in, they know. Staff relationships are excellent, and that's both on the positive side and on the other side. Documentation of frequent office conferences, including total staff involvement in programs, budgeting, office management, interpretation, other key aspects. And so even I learned from all of this, because I think, in general, I'm probably a little more generous than I should be. But in looking at all of these, it's really important to know the difference between meeting those minimum expectations and what it takes, to go the extra mile. And if we go back to our example over here, there's assisting other agents, worksite wellness conferences, how those working with specialists, how other agents help you, how you help them, so on and so forth. That's all what goes in here. And who are they? And name them. And again, specific numbers. How many agents? How many specialists? How many of what? And in what programs did you work? If you can organize it any way you want. You can organize it. You just create a long list of bullets there and hope it all makes sense by the time you get to the end of it. Or you can organize it by program. You can say, well, I have these 3 major programs, and there's 4 agents involved in this one and 3 specialists, and there's this and there's that, and whatever the case might be with each one. Or if it's all the same specialist, well, then maybe you don't need to do it that way. You're in the driver's seat. You know your program and your achievements better than anyone. So do what makes sense for you. But again, be specific and use numbers, dates, and details for that. The same thing holds true for external relationships. And to get a 4 and 5 in this area, community involvement at a level that leads to wide visibility and respect for extension, recognized as an asset to the community by key leaders. Okay. If we go to teamwork, again, scores a 3 to 5 if all these kind of criteria are met. But again, if we go back here, let's see how she did on the teamwork example. First step, seeing she's mentioning first step. That's exactly right. Cooperating as a team member at different levels with programming efforts. She talks about a recruitment committee, a district recruitment committee. Here's a task force she was asked to serve on. again, she's helping the she's helping the other agents with that in the program, recruiting new employees and interns. She's done the career day, food show, food challenge. All these are teamwork kinds of things. And then you get down into professional development. And again, I talked about that in the other training on the performance appraisal system, but there's a lot of things under professional development. And again, you want to talk about what your achievements were for this last year. Just like in the previous section with teamwork, you know, that's where you find office conferences, you've got staff retreats, you've got district committees, district and state activities, things that you do, judges and commissioners conference, things that you help with and support that don't benefit you personally. You do it to ensure the success of others and the organization that you work for. You put yourself last, you put others first, and you ensure, and you do things that ensure that other people succeed. What are some examples of that? Okay, I did not miss a single staff meeting, a single office conference all year long. That's quite an achievement for a person in a given year. I attended 26 or 36 or however many office conferences in a given year. Who wants to go to office conferences? That's all I hear from people is well, those are boring. I don't really get a lot out of them. How do they help me? How do they benefit me? Listen to those kinds of questions. Those aren't the kinds of questions and comments that you get from someone that is a team player. And those kinds of people will be the first to tell you they're great team players. Well, if they don't go because they don't get anything out of it themselves, then they're missing the point. Those kinds of things are not done for you. They're done to ensure the success of the unit and the agency as a whole, so that people can connect, so that they can communicate, so they can collaborate, coordinate, so that the agency functions efficiently and cooperates in a way that that benefits everyone. So if you're just thinking about yourself, then that is the teamwork domain is where that comes out. And so the things that you want to promote are those kinds of things, examples and achievements of things where you put others first, where you cooperated and you supported the Leadership Advisory Board and interdisciplinary programs and other things to ensure that they were successful. What are those things? List those achievements. And you'll find here that those are those things that were done. On professional development, I kind of got off on a little tangent there, but professional development, the same way. What did you do that promoted your professional development? Understanding that professional development are those things that you do where you're the learner. If you're a presenter, that's not professional development. If you go to a Rotary Club meeting and you are the program for that day, that's not professional development. If you go to a TCAAA meeting, or if you go to a cotton and grain producers meeting and you're the presenter, you're one of the presenters, that's, well, I guess you could argue that there's some amount of professional development, but you're the educator there. Once you sit in the audience and you are learning, then that's professional development. So you're the learner, or you are the subject of that. You're there to improve yourself somehow by learning something new, by networking, by some aspect, recognition for, an award of recognition, something along that order. So again, here this person puts their attended the new agent onboarding, spring faculty, fall faculty, region program planning, online trainings, reading of scholarly articles, career ladder. Some people even put their performance appraisal conference in there. that's fine. You have one every year and everybody knows that, but if you want to put it in there, that's okay too if you've got the room for it. But those are the things to put in there, and the criteria are all right here. You know, graduate study hours. Are you a member of any of the professional associations? Yeah. Now, if you look at that, there's no professional association here. So, you know, that's a question. That's a question. So you get where that's missing. Does that mean that they don't meet all their criteria? Well, not necessarily, because there may be other professional organizations that they're a part of. I don't know. That's why I drive up to the counties and we sit down and we talk about these things to make sure that there's clarity in all of that. And perhaps that's somewhere in the monthly report and I missed it, but it needs to be in here. And if it's not in there, the assumption made is that you didn't do it. It's not one of the achievements that you're putting forward. If you are working on Career Ladder, you work on your Career Ladder. You can and should put in there that you updated your VITA and that you are preparing, you know, for Career Ladder in the next year, possibly, or in the next 2 years, or what the case might be, because that demonstrates that you are achieving certain milestones, that you're moving in that direction. What did you do during that year to prepare for Career Ladder? There's a lot of things that you can do in a year related to Career Ladder that doesn't necessarily include applying. So remember that, okay? Professionalism, got that down here as well, and that's a little awkward, but you get the idea. So I guess in summary, you know, I just want to go back to these tips in this achievement report. Once you complete and submit this achievement report, you can't go back and change it. This is the achievement report that you have to live with. Once it's, you know, uploaded into the system, that is it. You can't go back and say, oh, I'm going to put this or I'm going to put that in. So what I would encourage you to do is to make sure that you start early. I do not recommend that you use last year's as the template for this year and add 1 or 2 bullets on the bottom, because if you do, it's going to look like you used last year's and you put 1 or 2 bullets on the bottom. And let me tell you, that has a souring effect on the person reading it, because they're going to know. And this document should be a very unique document that reflects the achievements you did this last year, and that should be a totally unique and set of achievements that is different from the prior year and should be different from the following year. Now, there's some things in there that may be similar, but the numbers should be different, the people should be different, the achievements should be different, the ordering should be different. There should be far more different than the same. That's really all I have, you know, and I hope this has been helpful in giving you some of my thoughts as to how to go about approaching the development of an achievement report. Certainly, if you have any questions, I invite you to contact me or contact your mentor or any of the agents that that are up in level 3 or even level 4 to help you with this. Ask those questions and make sure you got it right, because I've seen just some outstanding achievement reports for level 1 agents, which gives me great hope for what they're going to be doing 20 years from now. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope this has been helpful for you, and good luck.